He stands in silence, gazing up at the skyline that once symbolized everything he dreamed of: ambition, progress, permanence. Glass towers shimmer under a grey Manhattan sky, their mirrored surfaces catching fragments of a city that never sleeps. But tonight something feels different. The lights aren't all on. From his vantage point across Central Park, entire sections of the skyline are dark. Entire floors of glass perfection, completely empty. It used to be unthinkable. The idea that luxury in Manhattan could sit abandoned, that apartments worth tens of millions would echo hollow in the night. But in 2025, the illusion of value has begun to fracture. For years, the city ran on a simple equation. The higher you build, the higher the price. Billionaires Row became a vertical stock market. Towers not for living, but for storing wealth. Each penthouse a vault in the sky. But as the global economy wavers and the dollar trembles, the question no one wanted to ask now dominates every conversation in real estate circles. What happens when nobody wants to buy the illusion anymore? It started subtly. Developers noticed their waiting lists growing shorter. Luxury brokers whispered about price adjustments. Then, one by one, the headlines began to appear. Record number of Manhattan condos unsold. Empty towers, falling prices. Billionaires Row developers under pressure. At first, the industry dismissed it as a temporary correction. But beneath the polished surface, something deeper was shifting. The young man, a finance analyst who once dreamed of owning a piece of the skyline, walks past 57th Street, where towers like 111 West 57th, 157, and Central Park Tower rise like monuments to excess. He remembers the hype. Glossy renderings of infinity pools, sky lounges, marble imported from Italy. Each building a promise that ownership here wasn't just real estate. It was status, permanence, identity. But the numbers no longer make sense. A one-bedroom once priced at $3.2 million now sits at $2.1. Some floors haven't sold in 3 years. Entire developments have turned into ghost investments, quietly owned by shell companies and offshore funds that never intended to move in. The illusion of scarcity, that Manhattan luxury was a finite, priceless asset, has finally met the reality of oversupply. Developers who borrowed heavily during the low-rate years of the 2010s and early 2020s are now trapped. Financing costs have doubled. Interest on construction loans that once seemed manageable is now crushing. Some projects have quietly paused construction. Others have entered renegotiation with creditors. The same towers that symbolized invincibility now stand as cautionary tales, glass monuments financed by optimism, collapsing under reality. As he walks along Central Park South, he notices a billboard still advertising sky residences from $8 million. The irony is impossible to ignore. Behind the glossy image of a couple watching the sunset, the actual building remains half empty. It is not that no one wants to live in Manhattan anymore. It is that Manhattan's definition of home became detached from human need. The luxury market built for investors, not residents. Apartments became numbers in portfolios, not addresses for families. This is the heart of the luxury mirage. For decades, developers sold the idea that real estate was always safe, always appreciating. But the truth is, the market was never about living. It was about believing. And belief is the most fragile currency of all. He stops by Columbus Circle and looks up at the Time Warner Center. It once symbolized the perfect union of commerce and lifestyle, offices, retail, five-star condos, and hotel suites. But even here, cracks appear. A quiet rotation of ownership, luxury buyers exiting at a loss. What began as a trickle has become a silent flood. Every real estate bubble is built on faith. Faith that demand will always rise, that wealth will always flow, that the city will always attract the next generation of dreamers willing to pay any price. But this time, the city itself is changing. Remote work reshaped the skyline's logic. Why live in a $10 million tower when half the year you in Miami or Dubai? Why pay $20,000 a month for a view of the park when your fund is bleeding cash elsewhere? By late 2024, even the brokers, eternal optimists of Manhattan, began admitting what no one wanted to say out loud. There are more condos than buyers. Developers started offering incentives that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Multi-year tax abatements, private club memberships, even art collections bundled with penthouses. Anything to create the illusion of demand. But demand, once artificial, rarely returns on its own. In private meetings downtown, financial analysts whisper about the shadow inventory, thousands of unsold luxury units hidden behind LLCs and complex financing structures. If those units ever hit the open market at true value, the illusion of stability would vanish overnight. The protagonist pauses on a quiet street near Fifth Avenue. He stares at the facade of a new luxury tower, lights flickering on a few floors, the rest dark. He imagines the investors behind each window, foreign billionaires, hedge fund managers, corporations parking wealth offshore, all betting on the same idea, that Manhattan's prestige would never fade. But prestige isn't eternal. It's sustained by story, by confidence. And when the story breaks, the market follows. Real estate is emotion disguised as math. For years, the emotion was desire, the desire to own, to belong, to display success. But today, the emotion is fear, fear of overexposure, fear that the property bought as an asset has become a liability, fear that the dream of Manhattan luxury is ending not with a crash, but with a quiet retreat. Some call it a correction, others a collapse. But beneath the terminology lies something deeper, the end of a cultural narrative. The young man looks out across the East River as night falls. Towers glimmer, but the darkness between the lights tells a truer story. For every lit apartment, there are two sitting empty, silent witnesses to a system that mistook speculation for stability. He wonders if future generations will look back at these towers the way we look at the empty mansions of the Gilded Age, symbols of a moment when wealth believed itself immortal. Manhattan didn't lose its beauty. It lost its balance. The illusion was never the glass or the steel or the skyline. The illusion was believing that price equals permanence. And as the night deepens, he realizes the towers aren't empty because the city failed. They're empty because the story they were built on finally ran out of believers. Morning sunlight strikes the skyline like a revelation. From the riverfront, Manhattan still looks flawless, a cathedral of ambition carved in glass and steel. But beneath the light, the silence grows heavier. What was once the world's most coveted skyline now hides a truth too expensive to ignore. The numbers tell the story better than any skyline can. Over 30% of ultra-luxury condos built since 2015 remain unsold. Billions of dollars in idle equity sleep in empty penthouses above Central Park. Billionaires Row, once the pinnacle of prestige, has become a vertical museum of speculation. For years, developers and bankers operated on the same assumption, that demand at the top was infinite, that there would always be another billionaire, another fund, another buyer eager to turn square footage into status. But global capital has changed course. Interest rates rose, the dollar weakened, and geopolitical uncertainty made even the wealthiest investors cautious, and so the illusion began to crack from within. He walks through the hushed lobby of a newly completed tower on West 57th Street. The marble still smells fresh. The concierge stands by a desk polished to perfection, but there's no one to greet. No footsteps echo in the hallways. Only the faint hum of air conditioning circulating through spaces meant to feel alive. He speaks to one of the property managers, a woman who's been here since pre-construction. Her voice carries a quiet sadness. "Some of these units haven't even been furnished," she says. "They were never meant to be homes, just assets." She pauses. You can tell the difference. The apartments where people actually live, they feel warm. The others, they're like storage rooms for money. And that dies when it hits him. The luxury market wasn't about housing at all. It was about narrative, a collective belief that the rich would keep getting richer and Manhattan would always be their stage. But now, even the players are leaving. Many of the foreign buyers who once anchored the market, from China, Russia, the Middle East, have pulled back, either due to restrictions, sanctions, or the realization that their investments aren't performing. Local developers, meanwhile, are stuck with staggering debts. Financing costs that once hovered around 3% now exceed 8%. Projects that once promised $500 million in revenue now struggle to break even. And when the financial scaffolding begins to wobble, it's not just the skyline that trembles, it's the whole ecosystem. Luxury brokers close offices, construction firms delay payrolls, interior design studios that catered to the ultra-rich watch their contracts vanish overnight. In Midtown, a once celebrated real estate firm quietly shutters its flagship branch. Its glossy window display, "Live Above It All," fades in the sun. The protagonist stops to watch workers remove the letters one by one. The final word to come down is all. The irony isn't lost on him. It isn't just about empty condos. It's about what they represent. A decade of distortion where money replaced meaning. He visits Hudson Yards, the gleaming mega development once hailed as the future of Manhattan. Now even that vision feels uncertain. Retail vacancies have doubled. The promised influx of global residents never materialized. The vessel, once a tourist magnet, stands fenced and silent. A real estate analyst he meets in a nearby cafe sums it up bluntly. The luxury boom was never sustainable. It was a shell game. Developers borrowed cheap, built high, sold fast until the world stopped playing. But the fallout isn't limited to luxury buyers. It trickles down, reshaping everything below it. As high-end values drop, tax assessments shift. City budgets tied to property revenue tighten. Middle-market developers freeze projects. The shockwave spreads, quiet but relentless. For decades, Manhattan real estate was treated like a religion. Prices never went down, or if they did, faith would always bring them back. But now faith is gone. The protagonist returns to his apartment, modest compared to the towers he studies. From his window he sees a skyline that once inspired awe. Now it feels like a warning. He remembers a time when owning property in New York felt like owning a piece of history. But somewhere along the way, the idea of home was replaced by asset. Apartments were priced by square footage, not by soul. He scrolls through listings on his phone, dozens of price cuts, desperate brokers writing copy that borders on poetry, rare opportunity, price to move, motivated seller. Each phrase a sign of quiet panic. In a coffee shop near Bryant Park, he overhears two investors debating whether to offload their luxury holdings at a loss. One of them mutters, "We'll never see those numbers again." The other simply replies, "Then maybe it's time we stop pretending." That's what this moment feels like. The end of pretending. For a decade, the luxury market was the city's illusionist, conjuring value out of narrative, wealth out of air. Now, as interest rates rise and global liquidity dries up, the magic trick no longer works. But what replaces the illusion? That question lingers in every boardroom, every construction site, every bank meeting. The market doesn't vanish overnight. It evolves. Some developers pivot to rentals, others quietly sell stakes to foreign funds, some simply walk away, letting creditors take the towers. The protagonist visits one such building, a glass monument whose ownership changed hands twice in a single year. Its new owners, a consortium from Singapore, plan to hold it indefinitely. The old owners, bankrupt. Their dreams of endless appreciation dissolved in balance sheets. He walks the hallways, silent, perfect, lifeless. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame the city like a museum exhibit. From up here, Manhattan looks eternal. But he knows the truth now. Eternity in real estate is just an illusion sustained by liquidity. Down on the street, construction cranes still rise. The city never stops building, even when it's already full. Each new tower a symbol of both hope and denial. In the financial district, an economist he interviews offers a final reflection. Real estate is cyclical, yes, but what's different now is psychological. People don't trust the system anymore. They don't believe price equals value. That line stays with him long after he leaves. Price no longer equals value. As night returns, he stands again by the park, watching the skyline flicker. The towers remain, majestic, silent, unresolved. Symbols of a market that believed it could escape gravity. He realizes the luxury mirage isn't just about buildings. It's about people, investors, developers, brokers, dreamers, all chasing permanence in a world that keeps changing. And perhaps the greatest illusion of all was thinking that Manhattan could ever belong to anyone. The city isn't a possession, it's a pulse. And when the heart stops beating, no amount of glass can bring it back to life. He turns away from the skyline and walks toward the subway, the one place in New York where everyone, rich or poor, stands side by side. For the first time in years, the illusion fades, and what remains finally feels real.